Comrade Miguel, Your Excellencies. First, I'd like to express our solidarity to the government and people of the Kingdom of Morocco and of Libya and of all the other countries throughout the world, especially in Africa and Asia and Latin America, the Pacific, countries which have suffered tremendous loss of lives and damage to property as a consequence of climatic and weather and events of nature. Our prayerful consideration with the families who have suffered. Your Excellencies, I listened to 3 splendid speeches this morning, today thus far, and I read the declaration, the draft declaration, and I support all 46 paragraphs. I do not want to repeat so much what has been said to see if I can add value to our deliberations. Science, technology, and innovation are not a series of aggregated technical functions which are configured and maintained in science laboratories. They take place in the real world in a social and political economic laboratory. And like all important questions before us, it's about who gets what, when, where, and how. There is a view abroad that the struggle in today's world among competing powers is a struggle between democracies and autocracies. My country, which is a liberal democracy and steeped in social democracy, we reject this self-serving and hypocritical thesis. This struggle is about resources, who owns them, who controls them, who distributes them. Every one of us who is wise and mature know this to be so. And when the subject matter arises, we have the big global powers tell us that there is, they want a new world order. From the trenches of the periphery in the Caribbean, I ask 3 haunting questions. What's new? Which world? And who gives the orders? It is critical that we heed a fundamental issue raised both by the President of Cuba and the Secretary General of the United Nations and the President of the African Union, or brother the President from the Comoros, that we need solidarity with one another. And This solidarity must emerge from our own interests and the interests broadly of humanity. There are 8 billion people in the world. Since the 18th century and into the 19th century, there have been rulers of what you may call today a golden billion people. Not the billion people who are ruling, you know. It's the rulers of those billion people. Well, we are at a particular inflection point in our history where we have to stop this. Otherwise, we are going to end up being marginalized and being given crumbs from the sumptuous table. You know that, and I know that. Yet, we continue, many of us, to proceed in that manner. There are 3 broad approaches awaiting us. We can roll over and play dead, which we are not prepared to do. That's why we are gathered here in Havana in the G77. We can make accommodations where necessary and desirable, but always bear in mind that when we are making those accommodations, we must not end up in a cul-de-sac. We mustn't find ourselves in a dead end. We must continue to move to the mountaintop, despite the fact that in accommodating, we may take some zigs and some zags. And very critically, in solidarity, we have to resist creatively around an agenda which is our own and which we own. We can't come off the world with the countries of the golden billion. We have to engage them, but we have to engage them more seriously in our own interests. I heard this morning, for instance, there was just praise given to the Cubans for the development of vaccines. But those vaccines were not able to be utilized by several countries because we did not control or determine the regulatory regime. The regulatory regime was determined elsewhere. That is one instance of who gets what, when, where, and how. We are at a point of an emerging multipolarity where men and women in our contemporary world are poised to make history. But human beings make history not in circumstances chosen by themselves or what they would like those circumstances to be, but circumstances which they face and which have been inherited from the past. And part of what we inherit are cobwebs on our brains, which weigh upon us oftentimes like a nightmare. We have to free our minds of those cobwebs. In everything, but the subject today of this conference, of this summit, science, technology, and innovation. And it's not isolated. This and the Global Digital Compact are not isolated from the Sustainable Development Goals. And climate finance and financing for development and the reform of the international financial institutions and of the United Nations Security Council, and for reparations for native genocide and the enslavement of African bodies. All of these matters, though they are different and segmentalized, they constitute, in my view, a composite whole. And it is in that frame that I urge we address our subject, always in solidarity with one another. Too often we have been picked off one by one in our own narrow self-interest. Let us at this juncture work together in solidarity. We approve this declaration. It's an excellent declaration. And we set about to work with it. We do have, historically and in the contemporary period, shared expressions. But those shared expressions must be strengthened. And where we have shared experiences, those shared experiences must be translated into structured, shared expressions in solidarity, in our interest and the interest of humanity. That is my simple message. Thank you very much.